Let me be the first to welcome you to Profit Layers, using precision data to discover ROIs. So my name is Jeffrey Nizuka. I am a business analyst at Ag Analytics, and I will be your host for today's webinar. With us on the presentation, we also have Corey Jones, Customer Success Specialist at Ag Analytics, who will be walking us through a live demo of the Profit Layers platform. You'll go ahead and meet Corey shortly here in a bit. To dive into what we will cover on the webinar today, we'll start with a couple of value points for your operation, then we'll transition into a live demo of the platform itself. From there, we'll cover how you can go ahead and get started using Profit Layers. Then we'll wrap up with a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Again, as mentioned previously, if you've got any questions at any point during the webinar, feel free to ask us by using the Q&A feature on the Zoom interface. I will take all your questions, aggregate them up, and then Corey and I will handle them during the Q&A session. So without further ado, let's jump into the presentation, where I would like to start with a little bit of setting some background information. So on the next slide, let's get on the same page first and foremost. As a grower, you collect precision data for your farms and fields. So for example, we have yield maps, application spray maps, seeding operations, and much, much more. This is great information and represents a source of truth for your growing season. But the next question is, like, how do I use this information to manage my bottom line? More directly, how can I use the precision ag data to track profits and hopefully boost my profits for the next year as well? Well, that is where Profit Layers comes in. So using Profit Layers, you will have the power to quickly create profit maps and analysis reports that tell you all about your ROI breakdowns by operation or practice. If you want more in-depth reports, we also give you full customizability in terms of creating those reports, so you can do things like manage farm profits year over year, for example. You know, ultimately, we see ourselves as the best way for you to use your precision ag data in not only tracking profits for this year, but hopefully using them to improve for next year. And with that, I would like to introduce Corey Jones, who can give a quick introduction and walk us through a live demonstration of the Profit Layers platform. So without further ado, Corey, over to you. I will pause the screen share.
Thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. My name is Corey Jones. I am the Customer Success Specialist here at Ag Analytics. That means I tend to be the person on the front line for a lot of these initial demonstrations, but I'm also here to answer any questions moving forward for existing customers who need any additional help. So allow me to get right into it here with walking through what Profit Layers is, what it does, and how it is intended to be used to benefit you and your operations. So here we can see a quick example of what our system is actually doing. We are taking your precision ag data and layering it to create a true profit map, so you can easily see where profits are highest, where they're lowest, and use different analysis tools to dig deeper to really understand what is impacting your bottom line. Now, in order to get started, the first thing you have to do is integrate your data so that we can begin to create those maps for you. We have partnerships with John Deere Operations Center, Climate Field View, and CNH Industrial. So all you have to do is accept the terms, begin your integration. And then what this is going to do is, if you are already logged in to your Ops Center or your Field View, then you will not need to sign in. Otherwise, you will be prompted to do so. Once the connection has begun, you will choose which organization to integrate. If you choose one on the Deere side that has already been integrated, it won't let you reintegrate. And that is because of an automatic data sharing that we have with John Deere. Any changes, any updates, any post-harvest calibration that come in will automatically flow through to our system through John Deere. So once you choose your organization, and if it is your first time integrating, hit save, you will then be brought to the integration screen. Now, since I've done it before, it was very, very quick. Generally, this process takes anywhere from a few minutes to at most a few hours, depending on how much data you are pulling in and whether it's for 1 year or multiple years, as we will pull in that historic data for you to analyze as well. So now let me show you how you get into the tool and what that data looks like once it is fully integrated. So back here, you would want to open up Profit Layers. And here you can see a quick run through of what the expected flow is. You're going to choose your field, choose which layers to incorporate into that profit map, only choose what you care about seeing, and then you can view the profit map and use different analysis tools to investigate farther. We break it down by org, farm, and field. So this is a good field. We're going to be looking at some demo data today. So once we open up this setup profit layers, the first thing you see is your total acres and the selected year. It will automatically show the most recent year, which has any relevant data for this particular demo field that happens to be 2016. And you can see harvest, seeding, chemical and fertilizer costs. All of this came directly from that integration. Your varieties, your acreage, your yield. The only exception is the actual inputs. Now, since input costs are not recorded on FieldView or the App Center, that is something that has to be entered. However, we don't make you start from scratch. We will pre-populate these values based on various factors, historical analysis, where you are, what type of variety you're using. So you won't have to start from scratch. But if you have more precise data, you can of course make those alterations right there, and it will update across the board. And there are ways to update your input costs on an organizational scale, which is much quicker and more efficient. And I will show you that a little bit later in the presentation. But for now, the important part is your first time on here, you should go through, make sure that you are seeing the correct information. If you expect to see something that isn't there, I recommend you check the hidden entries, because what we do is we display the information for the selected year, but we know there will be times when you want to include maybe an application from a previous year. Maybe you did a post-harvest manure application and you want to include that in this year's profit map. Well, that will likely be included in the hidden entries. So you just open that up, find what you're looking for. And then if you want to include that, you would hit show. It will then reflect in your total profit. If you don't want to see that, you can hide it and it will no longer reflect. So it's very quick and easy to customize what layers you include in your profit map. For the field passes, we do automatically generate this based on the information coming in. If you have more accurate information or pieces that you have calculated, you can of course alter those prices and those values right there. Now, I will state that for chemical and fertilizer costs, so if you were to change the cost values here, you would just hit that pencil. Now, you have likely noticed that the only thing you can change is the price. You can't change the product or the quantity or the units. And this is because we didn't want to create a two-way street of data flow between our system and the App Center or FieldView. We wanted it to be very much one-sided, where you get your data correct wherever it is currently stored, whatever cloud-based platform you use. Once that data is correct, you then pull it into our system to do farther, more in-depth, profit-focused analysis. This way, there isn't a lot of back and forth and confusion. Now, there is one exception to what can be pushed back, and I will cover that a little bit later. But for now, know that you can change your prices for any tank mixes there. Once you have clicked through, viewed your data, entered a cash rent if you have one, or any other flat rate costs for your field, you're happy with your total profit, the next step is to view profit layers. Now, what it's doing right now is it's taking all of those layers and creating an actual profit map. This is not a yield map. This is not a revenue map. It's a profit map. Because for every 8 meters on that field, we include every cost and every revenue. So you can really see where profits are highest and where they're struggling. So the first thing is, let's figure out what these colors mean. We have our scale down here. Looks like dark red is lower profits, moving into dark green being higher. You can of course change that. You can add more or fewer ranges. You can change the values, the colors. You can even save a custom template if you want to use the exact same scale for all of your fields. So using this existing scale, let's get a sense of what's happening in this field. So it looks like the southern section down here is the highest profits. North is fairly decent. We do have a few pieces here and there that seem to be kind of organic to that field, judging based on the shape. But the main thing that jumps out to me is this strip right through here. This looks like something was done intentionally to the field that has unfortunately pulled down those profits. So let's figure out what might have happened through here to negatively impact those profits. The first place we're going to check is this data table in the upper right-hand corner. Here you can see a breakdown of all of your profits by variety. So we have two varieties here that are fairly high performing, 464 and 456, fairly close to the average, but this one in the middle, 373, that is significantly lower than the other two. And it covers 15 acres out of 74. So that might just account for this swath. Now, looking just at the numbers, you really can't be sure. So let's actually find out where this variety existed on our field, this DKC 53. So we're going to do a variety analysis here on the left, and we're looking for that DKC 53. Here it is in brown down there. Now that does seem to line up fairly well. Let's double check by looking at both maps side by side. So I've opened comparison view. Here you can see all of the maps you have access to, move them around for exactly this purpose. Easy side-by-side analysis. So in this instance, that area of low profits perfectly lines up with this variety. So we know that this did not perform well relative to the other varieties, should probably not be used again next year, but that is just my takeaway from the data. Now, the reason why we started with a variety analysis is because variety tends to be the quickest and easiest to check and is often a likely culprit. However, that is certainly not the only scenario that can play out on your field. What if, let's say, you had a test application on part of a field and you want to know, did this increase profits? Did this drag them down? Should I use this on my whole field, or did I waste my money? Now for that, I'm going to jump into another field because I know there was a test application. First thing, same process. Look at the field, get a sense of what's happening. Now the south seems pretty decent profits, few pieces here and there, but nothing major that stands out. The north, considerably lower. First thing we ask, could it be variety? The reason why we ask that is because it's the quickest and easiest to check. Now there are two varieties, 467 and 428, about an 8% difference, not very significant. And we look at the total acres, 6 out of 115, we know that couldn't possibly account for this entire northern swath. So variety was not the culprit for this field. Now, since we know there was a test application, instead of variety analysis, let's do a zone analysis specifically to find out where that application was placed on the field to see if it lines up with any of these profits. So here I have pulled up an application zone map for this CC blend application. And we can see that the application was applied in the purple area, not applied in the gray. And it looks like in this instance, in the applied area, profits were about $100 per acre less than they were in the not applied area. You can even compare the applied profit map to the not applied profit map just to see that those ranges are about $100 less across the board. So in this instance, the application did not have the desired effect. And in this case, it should probably be used different in a different area, try a different take mix next year, because this did not have the desired outcome. Now you can also split up your zones more manually and really create any kind of custom zone map to be able to see how your profits varied throughout the field. You can literally slice them up like that if you want to, and we will calculate what the average profits were for each area. You can even, if you are in the US, tie your data to the SERGO, public soil zone data, to be able to see where your different soil types are on your field and how those soil zones correlate to profits. And that would look something like this, where you can see the breakdowns of each soil zone, learn a little bit of data about that soil type, and see the average profit in each one of those areas. So there's a lot that you can do, a lot of customization within the zone analysis to really slice this up however you want to. Now, everything that I've shown you thus far has been very map focused, which makes sense. That's the majority of who we are and what we do. But there are a number of other ways to be able to see the data as well. For instance, we have this cost chart. What this does is you can see the same data that powers the setup profit layers, but instead of just listing the data out in a table, you can actually see how your different costs stack up against each other. So for instance, how do my harvest costs compare to my seeding costs? And very quickly get a sense of how money is being spent on a field. Beyond that, we also have a scatter plot. Now again, the same data used to make the scatter plot is what is used to make the maps, but this just allows you to look at the data in a different way to be able to more quickly and easily see if there are correlations. So in this instance, we're looking at elevation and profit. There does not seem to be all that significant of a correlation here. So instead, let's maybe look at a seeding rate and profit. So as we increase seeds, there is not a direct impact on overall profit. So instead, let's look at seeding rate compared to your yield for that variety. Now this is interesting. It looks like at a lower seeding rate, the yield is quite variable. And as we increase our seeding rate, although it doesn't overall increase our profit, it does make our yield much more stable and reliable. So that's an interesting takeaway that might not have been intuitive enough to realize without having looked at the data this way. Now, there are some additional pieces, some tools, which are at your fingertips, which are not specific to the profit mapping that I will quickly go through. First, for our US users, we have a host of insurance tools. Now, these are intended for educational purposes, but since we do have a background in crop insurance, we're very familiar with it. What we've done is we've built these tools so you can easily see how different actions or scenarios might impact you based on what your insurance level is. So for instance, you have an approved yield of 161 bushels per acre. So this is what you expect to happen. What if in reality, you only have 100 bushels per acre? You can see how your net insured profit per acre and your payments at different coverage rates will change. We also have this AI program that figures the likelihood of reaching different revenue points for your field for a given year based on historical analysis. And then we use that to calculate how likely you are to receive a payment at different coverage rates. So again, all of this is meant for you to kind of play around with the data, get a sense of how crop insurance works so that when you do talk to a crop insurance agent, you will feel more confident and like you really understand everything that is being discussed. Then the last piece within these sidebar tools that we have here are a breakdown of landlord-tenant split. So this is for someone who doesn't have just a cash rent, but has some sort of cost sharing with the landlord. Let's say you have an even 50-50 split for most of your operations, but maybe here and there you pay a little bit more than your landlord, or your landlord pays a little bit more than you. You can go through and make all of those alterations. We automatically calculate who is paying what or who is receiving what in terms of harvest. And you can create a PDF of this, bring it to your landlord at the end of the year, use it as part of lease negotiation, make sure everything is transparent. And of course, it's totally up to you whether you print this report or not and how you use it. Now, speaking of printing reports, you can also make a report of the profit map itself. Now that is going to look something like this. And here you can see the visual of the profit map, the two varieties, any notes that you've entered. So I like to state what my overall takeaway was. In this case, application lowered profits in the north. And then all of that data that goes into powering that profit map. Also your scatter plot and cost chart, however they were toggled when you created this report. It's short, sweet. If you are the grower, then this is something that you could easily save for your records. If you are a dealer doing this report on behalf of a grower, this is a really nice thing to be able to print off, share with them, show them what you learned and what your recommendation is based on this data. Now that is kind of the quick run through of a couple of different use cases of how you can use profit layers to discover your ROIs and learn more about what is impacting profits in your field. Now there are, of course, some more advanced features and some additional pieces that I would like to highlight as well. The first is a callback to something I mentioned earlier about how the data is meant to flow one way from your cloud-based storage provider, whether it be Climate, John Deere, CNH, to us. The one exception to that is we can push a profit map back to John Deere Operations Center. And now the reason for that is these profit maps don't exist there. So by pushing this back, it's not interfering with any existing information. When you push it back, it's going to look something like this. It lives as a separate layer within Field Analyzer and Field Analyzer Beta. Now, the great thing about this is if you are the grower using profit layers, but you want your dealer to be able to look at something, you can push this back, and then as long as you have that sharing on, they can see it. Or if you're the dealer and you want to be able to deliver results to your grower, you can push this back into the Op Center so that they can see what you learned from using those tools. It really makes things a lot more transparent and adds an extra layer of usability. Now, there are some additional pieces as well. For instance, within the setup profit layers, I did mention at one point that you can change all of your inputs individually, which is quick, it's easy, it's intuitive. But what if you have this variety for that year on 20 different fields and your price is just a little bit off? Sure, you could go into 20 fields and make that change 20 times, but that would take a lot of time and that wouldn't be very convenient. So we built out something called the price converter. What this allows you to do is you can look at either seeding, applications, harvest, or any other expenses and revenues. And then you can sort by crop, variety, year. Let's say I wanted to find a 2016 seed that I wanted to change the price on. Once I find what I'm looking for, if I were to change the price to 356, for instance, as soon as I hit save, everywhere that this variety exists for that given year, it will update across your entire organization. So that is meant to be a time saver and also to keep things consistent across your fields. Now there's also the converter aspect of this. So if you hit this little pencil within the price converter, you can see the crop, the variety, and let's say you spent $140 for a bulk bag of seeds and got 80,000 seeds. You just state what you paid and what you got for it. Leave the calculations up to us. We will automatically do that and apply them everywhere it needs to be applied. Once you hit save, that will be done automatically on your behalf. So not only is it a time saver, but it is helping to remove some of the human error of having to do a lot of calculations, and it will speed up your time so that you can get back out and doing the important things. Now, the final piece that is connected to profit layers that I want to show is everything that I've shown up until now has been very specific to the individual field and being able to zoom in and look more closely to discover what is affecting profits on the subfield level. That's great. It's what we're good at. It's what people love about us. But we did have a lot of feedback from people who want to be able to do the opposite, kind of zoom out from the field and be able to see trends affecting the entire farm. So with that in mind, we built the Farm Report tool. Now, what Farm Reports does is it allows you to see trends across your entire farm operation rather than just the individual fields. The nice thing about that is you can do things like a variety breakdown for multiple fields at once. So here we have all of the crops and all of the varieties from this entire demo farm. And you can see the average profit, how prevalent each variety was across all of your fields. So you can very easily see what performed well, what performed poorly. Let's say I want to only look at corn. So I'm going to remove soybeans. So within just corn, I want to know what was my highest performing variety of corn. In this instance, it would be this right here at $573 per acre. But I can see it was only applied to 7.5 total acres. So that's not quite enough to know for sure that this is a very high producing hybrid. But with numbers like that, I know I should probably use this more next year. So instead, we look for something that was more prevalent on the field. So this variety right here, this DKC 52, $300 per acre. Okay, that's a fair bit lower than our highest performer, but it's consistent. So let's maybe see what were the most common varieties placed on our farm. So we have our top 2 most common varieties with very different total average profits, 300 compared to 100. So between these two, this one would be your MVP in terms of consistently decent performing profits, and this one significantly underperformed, probably should not be used again next year. And the nice thing about being able to do this on a farm basis rather than field by field is it helps to eliminate some of those other variables that are hard to take into account. Because here you can see overall trends affecting multiple fields within that farm. The next piece here within farm reports is this profitability matrix. What we've done here is this is where your historical data comes into it. You can see for this demo account, we have data from 2012 all the way up to 2021. And for each field within that farm, I have the total average profits. So here you can see overall trends, which is really nice because you might have a high performing field for several years and then it suddenly dips down. So 554, 359, 445, and then 103. So something happened after 2017 that negatively impacted this field. Now that you've used farm reports to discover a field of interest, you can then hop into profit layers and find out what happened between those 2 years. Did you switch to a different crop? Did you stop applying a certain application? This will allow you to see where your focus should be directed first. Now, another way you can use this is, let's say you want to know what your best performing field was for a given year. If you toggle the year up here, you can see your best performing fields in order. So a great idea to use this tool to kind of direct how you interact with profit layers would be to toggle that and say, I want to know what I did best, what gave me the best results. So demo field BL West for 2018 outperformed all of the others. That's where I should look because whatever I did, it was clearly working. Then the final piece here within farm reports is this total overview table. So here you can see your expenses, your revenue, your overall profits for all of your fields within that farm, what your crop was. Now I like to replace revenue with percentage unprofitable. Now, the reason why I like that is because what that essentially tells you is what fields had the greatest room for improvement. And then I'm going to sort by percentage unprofitable. So here we can see some of these were entirely profitable, moving up to much less profitable. And then once you've identified one that was not very profitable, you can investigate farther. So here we have a field that looks like all along this rim suffered heavy profit losses. Now it could be an overspray from a nearby field. Maybe this tree line ate up some of those nutrients. It's unclear just from looking at the map, but one thing we do know is it would be well worth our time to look at this field more closely within profit layers and discover what happened. Was there an application spray along this line? Did something happen on a neighboring field to impact it? Now you know where to look next. And I will also say that while you are on here, if you see some sort of input or cost that is a little bit off and needs to be updated, you can open the price converter right here, make that change, and it will apply everywhere that it needs to be applied across your operation. So that's meant to reduce some of the constant back and forth. A few more pieces that I would like to highlight within farm reports. The first is the fact that you can see a map view of all of your fields. This was added actually by request of a dealership a few months back. They wanted to be able to see basically just a different perspective on how the fields performed. So if you have fields that are clustered together, do they have similar profits? Or a field close to a water source, how is that working? And it just allows you to quickly get a sense of what fields are doing well, what fields are doing poorly, with the kind of actual real location of those fields in mind. Now, while you're on here, you can of course make a report of this data. You can either create a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet, which is great if you're already using spreadsheets to kind of track your input costs. For a PDF, that will look something like this, where you get a more detailed breakdown than you would with the individual field profit map. We have for each field how unprofitable it was, all of the pertinent data for those fields. Again, this is great if you are managing the data yourself and want to be able to keep physical records from year to year, or if you are managing this data on behalf of your grower and want to have something that you can physically put in their hand, that they can see how their fields are performing and what the takeaways are. So within farm reports, there's a lot of great pieces here that you can use to get more big picture insight into your fields. I would like to state that farm reports are pretty exclusive to a premium subscription, just due to the nature of where the data comes from. So for each one of these fields, there exists a profit map of the data. And as a limited user for a free trial, you can only generate a handful of profit maps. So in order to really get the benefit of the farm reports, you would have to be a premium user. But there are some additional data sets that are available to all users, regardless of whether you're premium or just first time on the platform exploring. One particular data set that I would like to highlight for you here is data layers. Now, what this is, it is totally separate from profit layers. Profit layers is profit analysis driven by your private, personal precision ag data. Only you have access to your profit layers. Data layers is driven by publicly available data sets. So anyone can access data layers for any field in the US. Now, what does that mean for you? That means you can use it to learn more about your soils, your soil health, or different attributes, how much clay, what the percentage of organic matter is, various other pieces. You can see if you're picking up a field that you haven't worked before, you can see what has been worked on that field historically. Looks like 2019, this was a potato field. You can also see elevation and slope information, so you can kind of use it as a scouting tool to learn more about a field before picking it up or working a new field. Or if this is your field and you want to be able to use these tools, you can see satellite crop health. So for instance, here we have a after harvest satellite imagery map. Of course, not a lot of greenery after we've already picked the field clean, but you can go through, select different dates, and see how your field is progressing from planting all the way to harvest and be able to identify problem areas sooner. You also have access to aerial imagery. So again, if you're looking to pick up a field, it's nice to know if there used to be a house or a barn or a tool shed on it. Real-time weather with weather alerts if you live in a tornado or hurricane zone. And also some historic data in terms of growing degree days, seasonal precipitation. So you can see we were fairly under the average for most of the growing season, unfortunately, and we really didn't start getting that rain until right around harvest. A little late, but we ended pretty average. We also have some additional kind of beta pieces for you to play around with, including a land value estimation, where you can look for sold land or land for sale within your area. A satellite radar that you can plug into other pieces if that is something you're familiar with. The baby version of the insurance tools. This is a fun one, optimal guidance lines. So here you tell us what your machine width is and how much overlap you want, and we will generate the optimal guidance lines and the number of passes. And the nice thing about this is you can then plug it into your machinery. So it went from 28 to 40 passes. You can download that shapefile and plug it right into your machinery. This is included with your ProfitLayers account. You can go on, access, and play with it right now. Also, a breakdown of how much of a field is tillable. Again, great to look at if you're thinking of picking up a field. You're going to want to know how much of it is actually usable for farmland. And finally, if we have any record of any tile drainage for a field, this would be a great place to check. So again, all of these data layers pieces are available to anyone, regardless of what level of subscription you have, whether you've used our tool for years or if you're a first-time user. Now, quickly going through, that was data layers, farm reports, and profit layers. Now, there was a lot there, and I'm sure you're all thinking, okay, what does it take for me to be able to use this? How does it work? How does it cost? So let me briefly go over the pricing. Everyone initially starts as a free limited user. So that means if you come onto the website, create an account, integrate your data, you are initially free. That allows you to basically play around with the tools and explore yourself to see if this is something that works for you. You can generate a handful of profit maps on us, but eventually you will be prompted to become a premium user because this is ultimately where you would need to end up to be able to continue using the tools for the year. This gives you the unlimited profit maps, full access to farm reports to be able to see the historical trends, the variety trends across multiple fields, and of course, timely customer support. Now, there are a couple of specific use cases which I would like to mention. If you are an individual grower and you have more than 2,000 total acres, you would want to contact us for a custom option based on your needs, as the premium is meant to handle under 2,000 acres. So just contact us, have a conversation, happy to speak with you. Or if you are a dealer or an agronomist and you want to manage this on behalf of multiple growers, let us know and we can set up some sort of enterprise deal with you for managing those multiple accounts. Now, if you're on here and you want to learn more about what is available or what is included, you can see this full list of features right here. Everything involved with profit layers, data layers, and farm reports clearly laid out here for you. Now, I know that I have covered quite a bit in the last 25 minutes or so, so allow me to kind of summarize what we've gone over. Within profit layers, you are getting access to profit maps created by your precision data, custom and unique to you and your needs. You can also use those different tools to be able to investigate farther. So not just seeing the maps, but interacting with it in a way that is meaningful to you. If you want to know if your variable rate seeding machines are paying off, if you want to know if that test application was worth the effort, this allows you to investigate and gain those insights. And beyond the individual field, you can gain insights for your entire operation with farm reports, both historical and for multiple fields. And beyond that, you have all of the kind of cherries on top, your soil maps, your historic rainfall, seasonal growing degree days, the satellite data, all of those pieces that are just additional, fun, and useful, either for scouting or for learning more about your fields and your operations. And the best thing is, due to our partnerships with John Deere, Climate Field View, and CNH, it is very easy to get started without countless hours being spent manually entering all of the data. So if you are a grower, your path to getting started is as simple as going on, integrating, creating your free account to get yourself started. Once that data is in and you've checked it out, made sure everything looks good, you're ready to move forward, getting that premium account will give you full access to everything you need for the year, including those farm reports. And we are, of course, here to help you should you have any questions moving forward. And then you can see those results specific to you and your fields. Now, if you want those results and you want to be able to get that insight, but you don't have the time or inclination to go through and use the tools yourself, but you still want to be able to learn from these profit maps, talk to your agronomist or your local precision ag specialist, or even your dealer, and see if they would be interested in adding this as a valued service option for you. Now, speaking to you dealers out there, if this is something that you do want to manage on behalf of your growers, contact us. Happy to start or continue that conversation. We know that the first step is just to get talking, so let's talk. And a pretty reasonable initial action step for you, I'm sure some of you invited your growers, and that's what you're doing here today. If you had some people who were invited but weren't able to make it, we will be sharing a recording of this demo with you. So you can, of course, share that with any growers who you think might be interested and use it to get a sense of who all might be into this kind of thing. Happy to help you sort that out. And that concludes the live demonstration for this webinar. Thank you so much for your time. We will now open it up to Q&A brought to you by Jeff, and I will do my best to answer your questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Corey, for that wonderful demonstration. That was a lot of content, and I think there are some great questions here that are in the Q&A. So let's go ahead and get through those. I will take the first one first, which is pretty simple. Will this recording be shared after the webinar? The answer is yes. We will take a little bit of time to clean it up and distribute it to all the folks who have registered. The next question that I have on my list, so is zone analysis limited to soil type, or can you use user-defined zones? I answered, obviously, yes, you can use our drawing tools to define your own zones on the field map. Of course, you can also use soil types to define zones. Now, Corey, if you want to show us exactly what that looks like, that would be great.
Certainly, and great question. So as you can see here, this is an example of a pre-generated map via Surgo zones. Now, if I wanted to clear that out and be able to just manually create zones, we do have some different tools here. First, you can use a slice tool to literally slice up that field however you want. Each zone will be treated as a separate management zone. Or you can use the grid tools here to create different chunks. I like to use this to isolate headlands from the rest of the field personally, but of course it's totally up to you. Or even if there's a very specific section you want a report on, you can just use those draw tools to make a polygon and create that as a separate zone. And then you can run the analysis and get that information for you.
Perfect, thank you for that. Let's go to the next question here, which is, how do I enter in all of my input costs and prices? Is there a tool that simplifies that process?
Certainly. Once you start, it's really two steps. Beginning of the integration, letting that happen automatically in the background. And then once your data is there, the only thing you really have to clean up are your input costs. For harvest and seeding, you can either make individual changes within these little boxes. For chemical fertilizer, there's the pencil. Field passes, there's also the pencil to make those changes. Or if you want to make changes across your entire operation, there's the price converter tool down here. And that lets you see seeding, application, harvest, all these different pieces, sort for exactly what you're looking for, make those changes, save, and it's as easy as that.
Perfect, thank you for that answer. Let's move on to the next question. My pre-apply operation for this season happened the previous November. How can I add that operation to my profit map and generate a report on it?
Gotcha, good question. Initially, we will show any data specific to the selected year. Now, you can select multiple years. So if you want to automatically pull in all the data for up to 3 consecutive years, you could do that route. But if there's just one specific operation or application that you want to include from a previous year, I would suggest checking your hidden entries, as we will automatically put data from close years here. So we're looking at 2016. I can see something from 2014 and a few operations from 2015. So if you're looking for something that happened last year, you will likely find it in the hidden operations. If you want to include it, just hit show. Your total profit will be impacted. If you hide it, it's like it isn't even there. Once it is included and shown, it will be one of the many layers that we put together to generate your custom profit map.
Perfect, thank you. Let's move on to the next question. After I integrate my data, how do I pull in new information throughout the season?
So for that, it depends slightly based on how your data came in. We do have a number of options for initially getting that data. So I had mentioned early on our partnership with John Deere, Climate, and CNH. So if you do have your data on one of those 3 platforms, definitely begin the integration here. Now, if you have data locally via a flash drive, or it's just saved on your computer somewhere, you can go into a field and just upload precision data. You can upload that zip file. This is a converter. We will turn it into whatever file format it needs to be to work with the rest of the data, and it will automatically pop in. You can also check the status to make sure that it is working correctly. Additionally, if there is data that only exists on a piece of paper somewhere, but you know what happened and you want to include it, you can also add manual operations, applications, seeding maps. So with those different ways of getting the data in initially in mind, once you need to make updates, if it was local data, upload the new file, show the new file, hide the old one. If it was manually created data, just go in and edit it. If it came from an integration, it depends slightly based on how you integrated. If you integrated with John Deere, we have those automatic sync. So any changes that happen within the operations center automatically flow through to us. If you have both open at the same time and you want those results to come over immediately, you can hit this sync data now for either your fields, your operations, or your boundaries, and that will cause it to come in quicker. It can take a few minutes, but again, that is fairly quick. If you are a climate user, you can simply restart the integration for your data, and anything new, we will pick up and pull into that year. So quite a few different options there.
Perfect. We had a request to quickly go over the guidance line optimization feature once more.
Sure. So for the guidance lines, this is a kind of a beta tool, but it is useful to get a sense of how many field passes you're going to need and to give you actually actionable info. So what you do is you will state what your machine width is. Let's say you're working with a 40-foot equipment, how much overlap you want. Maybe you want a lot of overlap, so let's go 3.5. And then once you hit that generate optimal guidance lines, we will calculate how many field passes are required to fully cover that field and the optimal angle. And then you can download that and plug it into your machinery. For most row crops, big open fields, relatively flat land, this should be a pretty useful and meaningful tool for you.
Perfect. Let's take this question about the ArcGIS platform. So the question is there a way to embed the PROFITLAYERS map directly into another web mapping application? The way to embed the PROFITLAYERS map into another web mapping application, like ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online, is to use our proprietary Ag Analytics add-in for ArcGIS Pro. This software add-in works in conjunction with the ArcGIS Pro desktop software application, and it allows you to generate profit maps in ArcGIS Pro desktop. If you're looking to generate a profit map on another web mapping application, I would definitely check out the Ag Analytics add-in for ArcGIS Pro. We've got some good content on it. You can find it very quickly at www.profit.ag/Esri. Okay, and with that, we've gone through all of the questions in the Q&A.
Allow me to point you to some additional resources. So on the main page, if you go to news, we put out a blog on a roughly bi-weekly basis. There's a lot of really great content here. They're meant to be just 2 or 3 minute reads, so it's not very time consuming. And we do everything from giving you tips and pointers as to best ways to use the tools, introducing new features or tools that we can bring to you, seasonal tips, or even things like what do equipment dealers ask about PROFITLAYERS? So even some use cases. We have some testimonials thrown in here. So you can really get a sense of what it is you're looking for, and we probably have some sort of blog covering the content you're interested in.
Again, if you need to get a more specific question answered that may be for your own use case, there's always many ways to get in contact with us. So for example, you can go to our website, profit.ag/contact. This is one of the easiest ways to get in contact with myself, with Corey, anybody else on the team. Just let us know what you're looking for and just send us a message through here. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you're looking for Corey's contact information specifically to try and get in touch with Corey, let's pull that back up on the screen here. We will leave this contact information up here. And yeah, from us at Ag Analytics, thank you again for joining our webinar. It was great to see all of you, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you all. Take care.